Chapter 1. The Knock That Changes the Recipe. Kevin Raines liked recipes that told him exactly what to do. Not because he lacked imagination, he wrote code for a living after all, but because there was comfort in knowing that if you followed the steps, the outcome would be predictable. Chop here. Sauté there. Don't rush the garlic unless you wanted bitterness and regret. Thursday nights were for this kind of order. The week was almost over. Mandy would be out of the shower in a few minutes, and dinner would land on the table at precisely the moment both of them could finally exhale. He stood barefoot in the kitchen of their condo, wooden spoon in hand, watching steam rise from the pan. The smell of tomatoes, basil, and something he'd added impulsively but couldn't name filled the air. Music played softly from his phone on the counter, nothing with lyrics, just background noise for thinking without committing to it. From the bathroom down the hall came the muffled rush of water and Mandy's voice, calling, "Smells good." Kevin smiled without turning. "It will, assuming I don't ruin it in the last 5 minutes." "You won't," she said. "You never do." That was true. He was good at things that rewarded consistency. His job as a programmer at a large, reputable tech company ran on that same principle. He showed up, solved problems, didn't cut corners, didn't chase unnecessary attention. Mandy understood that about him, respected it. She was the same way in her own world. Law instead of code, arguments instead of algorithms. Together they made sense. Not flashy, not fragile. The knock at the door was sharp and unexpected, cutting through the music and the domestic ease like a dropped plate. Kevin frowned, glanced at the clock on the microwave. Too early for deliveries, too late for neighbors. He turned down the stove, wiped his hands on a dish towel, and walked to the door with mild irritation tugging at him. Whoever it was would have to wait. The sauce couldn't be rushed. He opened the door to a man in a dark jacket holding a slim envelope and a clipboard. "Kevin Raines?" the man asked. "Yes. I'll need to see some identification." That gave Kevin pause. He reached for his wallet, handed over his license, and watched as the courier compared the name and photo with professional disinterest. "Sign here," the man said, tapping the clipboard. Kevin did, the pen scratching his name with the same motion he used 100 times a day on digital documents. The courier handed him the envelope, nodded once, and turned back toward the stairs without another word. Kevin closed the door and leaned against it for a moment, envelope in hand. It was heavier than it looked, not physically, but in the way his stomach tightened as soon as he noticed the letterhead through the paper. A law firm, out of state, the kind of thing that never meant good news. He carried it into the living room and sat down on the edge of the couch without realizing he'd chosen to. The room was quiet now, the music still playing faintly in the kitchen, the shower still running. He slid a finger under the flap and opened the envelope. The first line was enough to make the room tilt. Notification of inclusion in the last will and testament of Erica Watson. Kevin read it again, slower this time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something more reasonable. They didn't. Erica Watson. The name landed with impossible clarity, pulling memories out of storage like files he hadn't opened in years but never deleted. College, late nights, cheap beer and impulsive decisions. Laughter that came easily, recklessly. A woman who had looked at him like the world was larger than he believed it was. He heard himself exhale, a sharp sound that bordered on a laugh and failed. Erica Watson was his girlfriend once. 7 months start to finish. Not long by adult standards, but long enough to matter. Long enough to change him. She hadn't been in school. She lived with her parents, worked some job Kevin could never remember the title of, and spent her free time dragging him into experiences he'd sworn were not for him. "You can't live entirely in your head," she told him once, smiling like it was obvious. She'd taken him skydiving. He remembered the plane door opening, the wind screaming, his brain short-circuiting between terror and awe. He remembered clinging to the instructor like a lifeline and shouting promises to every deity he could think of. God, Santa, the Easter Bunny, whoever was listening, that he would never do anything reckless again if he survived. He remembered hitting the ground, kissing the dirt, laughing hysterically while Erica laughed with him, wild and alive and completely unafraid. He had loved her, or something close enough that it still carried weight. And then one day she was gone. No calls, no texts, no explanation. After 2 days of waiting and rationalizing, he'd driven to her parents' house and found it empty. A for sale sign staked into the lawn like punctuation at the end of a sentence. He tried to track them down through the realtor, but they'd left instructions not to forward their information. He'd been hurt, confused. Eventually, he told himself that if she could leave like that, then maybe she'd done him a favor. He'd grown up after that, closed himself off where he needed to, learned boundaries. He had not, at any point, imagined standing in his living room 12 years later holding a letter that said she was dead. The shower shut off down the hall. Kevin hadn't realized he'd started shaking until Mandy appeared at the edge of the living room, towel wrapped around her hair, eyes immediately narrowing with concern. "Kevin?" she said gently. "What's wrong?" He looked up at her, the letter trembling in his hands, and for once, the answer wasn't something he could code or reason his way through. "I don't know," he said honestly. Mandy crossed the room in 3 quick steps and sat beside him, close enough that their knees touched. She didn't reach for the paper right away. She read his face first, the way she always did. Is it work? He shook his head. Family? No. She waited. It's someone from my past, he said, and then corrected himself because accuracy mattered. Someone I used to date. That got her attention, but not in the way he feared. Mandy didn't stiffen or pull away. She stayed where she was. What about her? Kevin swallowed. Her name was Erica Watson. Mandy's brow furrowed. Was? She died. He gestured vaguely with the letter. This is from a law firm. Apparently I'm named in her will. Silence stretched between them, thick but not hostile. Mandy took the letter from his hands with care, scanning it quickly. Kevin watched her read, bracing for a reaction that never came. That's unexpected, she said finally. Yeah. She looked at him again. Do you know why? No, Kevin said. I haven't even finished reading it. He let out a breath. I don't understand. Mandy folded the letter neatly and placed it on the coffee table, grounding it there as if that might keep it from floating away and taking them with it. Okay, she said. Then we figure it out. He laughed weakly. That's your legal brain talking. That's Maya's brain talking, she corrected. Tell me about her. So he did. He told her about college, about being an introvert before he knew how to be anything else. He told her about skydiving and terror and laughter, about how Erica had pushed him and how part of him had needed that at the time. He told her about the disappearance, about the empty house and the unanswered questions. Mandy listened without interrupting, without judgment. When he finished, she reached for his hand. You didn't do anything wrong, she said quietly. I know, Kevin said. I thought that chapter was closed. Sometimes life reopens chapters, Mandy said. Not to punish you, just to show you something you didn't know before. He looked at her, at the woman who shared his home, his plans, his future. The woman who believed in intention and respect and building something that lasted. I'm scared, he admitted. She squeezed his hand. So am I, but we'll handle it. Together. The stove timer beeped from the kitchen, sharp and insistent, reminding them that dinner was still waiting, that the world hadn't stopped just because Kevin's had tilted. He stood up slowly. I should check the sauce. Mandy smiled, small but steady. I'll help. As they walked back into the kitchen, the letter remained on the coffee table, quiet and patient, holding answers neither of them were ready for yet. Chapter 2. Ghosts with a Pulse. Dinner was eaten, though neither of them could later have said what it tasted like. Kevin went through the motions, plating the pasta, grating cheese, setting the table, while his mind stayed anchored to the letter on the coffee table. Mandy noticed, of course. She always did. She didn't comment while they ate, didn't push conversation beyond small, functional exchanges. They had learned, over 3 years together, how to give each other space without creating distance. It wasn't until the dishes were done and the condo had settled into its nighttime quiet that Mandy spoke again. Come sit, she said, patting the couch beside her. Kevin joined her, leaving a careful inch of space between them out of habit, though she immediately closed it by tucking her feet under his leg. He reached for her hand, grateful for the solid warmth of it. Do you want to read the rest of the letter now? She asked. He nodded. Yeah, I think I need to. She handed it to him, already unfolded, and leaned back against the couch. Kevin read slowly this time, forcing himself to absorb the language instead of skimming for impact. The letter was formal, restrained, and maddeningly vague. Confirmation of Erica's death. Notice of his inclusion in the will. Instructions to contact the firm to schedule an appointment. No explanation. No context. Just the unmistakable fact that Erica Watson had thought of him at the end of her life. She didn't have to, Kevin said quietly when he finished. Whatever this is, she could have named anyone else. Mandy tilted her head. Do you think she didn't have anyone else? The question hung between them. Kevin hadn't considered that. He'd always pictured Erica surrounded by people. Friends? Co-workers. Maybe someone she'd married. Someone else's life, fully formed and far removed from his own. I don't know, he admitted. We were close, but we were young. It was college. I assumed she moved on. People can move on and still remember, Mandy said. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. He studied her face, searching for something he couldn't quite name. You're being really calm about this. She smiled faintly. I'm a lawyer. Unexplained documents are sort of my thing. That's not what I meant. I know. She squeezed his hand. Kevin, you haven't done anything wrong. This isn't a secret you kept. It's something that found you. He exhaled, shoulders sagging. It feels like a test. From who? Life, he said. The universe. Whoever's in charge of making sure things don't get too comfortable. Mandy laughed softly. If this is a test, it's poorly designed. Yeah, he agreed. No study guide. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that felt thoughtful rather than tense. Kevin stared at the far wall, watching shadows shift as a car passed outside. I was different back then, he said finally. Different how? More malleable, he said, searching for the right word. I didn't know who I was yet. Erica saw something in me I hadn't figured out how to see myself. She pushed me, sometimes literally. Mandy smiled. Skydiving. He groaned. I knew you'd latch on to that. I can't not, she said. That's objectively ridiculous. It was traumatic, he insisted. I screamed the entire way down. You scream when the smoke alarm chirps. That's different, he said. That's a warning system. She laughed again, then sobered. Do you miss her? The question was gentle but precise, the way Mandy always framed things that mattered. Kevin thought about it. About the version of himself who had loved Erica. About the man he was now. I miss who I was with her, he said slowly. I don't miss being hurt. I don't miss wondering why I wasn't enough for her to stay. Mandy nodded. That makes sense. She disappeared, he said. No explanation. No goodbye. I spent weeks replaying every conversation, trying to find the moment where I messed up. It took a long time to accept that sometimes people leave for reasons that have nothing to do with you. And now she's back, Mandy said softly. In a way. Kevin's mouth twisted. Yeah, with paperwork. They both glanced at the letter on the coffee table, as if it might be listening. I keep thinking, Kevin said, that this is about money, or property, or something practical. But that doesn't feel like her. We weren't about things. So what does it feel like? Mandy asked. He hesitated. It feels intentional. Mandy didn't argue. Then the only way to understand it is to show up. He nodded. I'll call them tomorrow. Good. He looked at her, a knot tightening in his chest. There's something else. Okay. What if this complicates things? He asked. Us. Our plans. Mandy's expression softened, but her voice stayed steady. Kevin, life was always going to complicate things. We just don't usually get a heads up. I mean, he stopped, rubbed a hand over his face. We agreed on boundaries, on respect. No close friends of the opposite sex. No situations that could even look questionable. And now my ex-girlfriend is reaching out from beyond the grave, he said. That feels questionable. Mandy studied him for a long moment, then leaned closer. The rule wasn't about controlling the past, she said. It was about protecting the future. You didn't violate that. I know, he said. I just don't want you to feel like I'm suddenly carrying something you didn't sign up for. She reached up and cupped his cheek, forcing him to look at her. Kevin Rains, I signed up for you. Not a clean narrative. Not a perfectly edited life. His throat tightened. You don't know what this is yet. Neither do you, she said. But whatever it is, we'll face it honestly. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. He closed his eyes briefly, leaning into her touch. I don't deserve you. She snorted. That's not how partnerships work. They sat there until the clock on the wall clicked past 9. The city outside humming with lives intersecting and diverging in ways no one could predict. Eventually, Mandy stood and stretched. We should get some sleep. Yeah, Kevin said, though he knew sleep would be optional at best. As they got ready for bed, Kevin found himself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, studying his reflection like it might offer answers. He looked the same as he had that morning. Same face, same life, and yet something fundamental had shifted. Mandy came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her chin against his shoulder. You okay? She asked. Define okay. She smiled in the mirror. You're processing. That's a generous term. She kissed his shoulder. Get some rest. Tomorrow we take the next step. He nodded. Later, lying in bed beside her, Kevin stared at the ceiling, memories surfacing uninvited. Erica's laugh, her confidence, the way she'd once said, you think too much. Jump. He jumped then. Tomorrow he would again, into the unknown, into answers he wasn't sure he wanted but knew he needed. Beside him, Mandy slept peacefully, her breathing even and steady. Kevin turned onto his side, watching her for a moment, grounding himself in the present. Whatever ghosts Erica had left behind, he wouldn't face them alone. And that, he realized, made all the difference. Chapter 3, the letter that waited 12 years. The law firm's office smelled like lemon polish and old paper, the kind of place designed to reassure people that serious things were handled here by serious adults. Kevin noticed this immediately and resented it just as quickly. There was something unsettling about how calm everything felt when his life was actively coming apart. He sat in a leather chair that was too firm to be comfortable, his knees angled slightly toward Mandy's. She'd come with him without hesitation, dressed professionally but not aggressively so. Soft lines, neutral colors, the visual equivalent of support without interference. Kevin kept his hands folded together in his lap, fingers laced tightly enough that his knuckles were pale. This won't take long, the receptionist had said with a polite smile before ushering them into the conference room. Kevin had nodded like that meant anything. The lawyer arrived precisely on time. Middle-aged, composed, with a voice trained to deliver bad news gently and good news cautiously. Mr. Rains. Ms. Allister, he said, shaking their hands. Thank you for coming in on such short notice. Kevin managed a polite response. Mandy offered a professional nod. They sat. I'll start by offering my condolences, the lawyer said. Erica Watson passed away 2 months ago as the result of a motor vehicle accident. She died at the scene. The words landed cleanly, efficiently. Kevin felt them more than heard them, a dull pressure settling behind his ribs. I'm sorry, Mandy said softly. Yes, the lawyer agreed. It's a tragic situation. Kevin swallowed. Why am I here? The lawyer studied him for a moment, as if confirming something internally, then reached into a folder and slid an envelope across the table. Before I answer that, he said, Ms. Watson asked that you read this. The envelope was plain, unmarked, sealed with care. Kevin stared at it, his pulse loud in his ears. That's from her? He asked. Yes. Mandy's hand found his under the table, grounding him. He nodded once and took the envelope. The paper inside was thick, slightly yellowed, folded neatly. The handwriting stopped him cold. It was unmistakably Erica's. The loops, the slant, the way she crossed her T's too low and crowded her words together like she was afraid of running out of space. His chest tightened painfully. He unfolded the letter. Kevin, if you're reading this, then something has happened to me. And for that, I'm sorry. He had to stop there, breath hitching. Mandy squeezed his hand gently, encouraging him without rushing. I've thought about writing to you 100 times over the years, and every time I didn't, because I convinced myself it was kinder this way. I don't know if that was true. I only know that I did what I thought was best at the time. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. Not because of the baby, because of you. You had your whole life ahead of you. You were kind and brilliant and so focused on the future you were building. I was terrified that telling you would make you feel trapped, or worse, obligated. Kevin's vision blurred. So I made a choice. I took that decision away from you, and I am so deeply sorry for that. I told myself I was protecting you, but the truth is, I was protecting myself too. Mandy's breathing had slowed beside him, her attention entirely on Kevin. Not the lawyer, not the room. Her name is Michelle. The room seemed to contract around him. She is the best thing I have ever done. She is funny and stubborn and smarter than she should be at her age. She asks too many questions and hates tomatoes and loves the ocean even though she's afraid of the dark. Kevin's hands trembled as he read. I never regretted keeping her. Not for a single second. But I always regretted how I left. I hope someday you can forgive me for that. He paused, chest aching, then forced himself to continue. If you're reading this, it means I can't be there for her anymore. And that's the part that scares me the most. Michelle is innocent in all of this. She deserves love, honesty, and a future that isn't defined by loss. You were always good at showing up, even when you were afraid. I'm asking you to do that now for her. I'm sorry, and thank you. Erica, the words at the bottom were softer, smaller, written as if meant for someone else entirely. Michelle, if you ever read this, know that your mother loved you more than anything. Loving people means letting them live, even when you can't. Kevin lowered the letter slowly, his hands numb. For a moment, no one spoke. The lawyer cleared his throat gently. Mr. Rains, Erica Watson named you as Michelle's legal guardian in the event of her death. Kevin's mouth opened. No sound came out. Mandy inhaled sharply, then steadied herself, her grip tightening just enough to remind him she was still there. I have a daughter? Kevin asked finally. His voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Yes, the lawyer said. Michelle is 12 years old. 12. Not a baby. Not a toddler. A whole person. A life already in motion. I didn't know, Kevin said uselessly. We understand, the lawyer replied. The next step is to verify paternity through a DNA test. Once that's confirmed, we can proceed with the legal aspects of guardianship. Kevin nodded mechanically. Where is she? Mandy asked, voice calm but firm. She's currently staying with a family friend, the lawyer said. Temporarily. Erica made arrangements to ensure Michelle was cared for until this matter could be resolved. Kevin pressed his thumb into the edge of the letter, grounding himself in its physical reality. She trusted me. Yes, the lawyer said. She did. They left the office shortly after, paperwork scheduled, timelines explained. Kevin remembered none of it. The hotel was only a few blocks away. Kevin didn't recall walking there. Only the sensation of movement and Mandy's presence beside him, solid and real. Inside the room, the door closed softly behind them. Kevin stood in the center of the space, letter still in his hand, and laughed, a short, broken sound. I'm a father, he said. Mandy didn't correct him. She stepped closer. Yes, I missed 12 years, he said. She grew up without me. She lost her mother. And now I'm supposed to just, he gestured helplessly. Step in. You're not supposed to do anything all at once, Mandy said. You're allowed to be terrified. I am, he said, voice cracking. I wanted kids someday. With you. Gradually. I thought I'd learn as I went. This feels like life skipped the tutorial. Mandy huffed softly. Life does that. He looked at her, fear sharp in his eyes. You didn't sign up for this. She didn't answer immediately. She reached for the letter, reread the last lines, then met his gaze. I signed up for you, she said. That hasn't changed. Tears burned behind his eyes. What if you leave? Kevin, she said, firm now. I'm here. We'll take this one step at a time. He nodded, clinging to that certainty. Somewhere, a 12-year-old girl was grieving the only parent she'd ever known. And Kevin Rains, programmer, planner, man who liked recipes with clear steps, was about to learn that some lives came already assembled, and loving them meant catching up fast. Chapter 4. A future that didn't ask permission. The hotel room felt impersonal in the way only carefully designed spaces could be. Neutral art, beige carpet, a bed made to look inviting but unfamiliar. Kevin stood just inside the door after Mandy closed it, still holding Erica's letter like it might dissolve if he let go. He set it down on the desk with deliberate care, smoothing the paper as though that might also smooth the day. Well, he said, exhaling sharply, this is not how I imagined tonight going. Mandy slipped off her shoes and set her bag down, watching him with the steady attention she used in courtrooms and crisis alike. You imagined a quiet evening and leftovers, she said. This is a departure. That's one way to put it. Kevin sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his hands over his face. The adrenaline that had carried him through the lawyer's office was draining fast, leaving exhaustion and fear in its wake. I keep thinking there's been a mistake, he said. That someone's going to call and say they mixed up the files. Wrong, Kevin Rains. Mandy crossed the room and sat beside him. You read the letter. That wasn't a mistake. No, he said. That was a very intentional. They sat quietly for a moment. Kevin stared at the carpet, noticing a faint stain near the desk that looked like a cloud if you squinted. I don't know how to do this, he said finally. Do what? Be a father, he said. To a 12-year-old. She's already a person. She has opinions, history, trauma. I thought parenting started with diapers and sleepless nights, not algebra homework and grief counseling. Mandy let out a small breath. I don't think anyone knows how to do it ahead of time. That's not comforting. She smiled faintly. It's honest. Kevin laughed weakly. I'm good at learning systems. You give me documentation, I'll figure it out. But this, he gestured vaguely. There's no manual. No trial environment. Welcome to humanity, Mandy said. He leaned back on his hands, staring at the ceiling. I'm terrified I'll mess her up. You won't, Mandy said. You don't know that. I know you, she replied. You care too much to be careless. That landed somewhere deep in his chest. He turned his head to look at her. What if I resent this? Mandy didn't flinch. That's an honest fear. I don't want to, he said quickly. But I didn't choose this. And I don't want to wake up one day angry at a kid who didn't ask for any of it. Mandy nodded slowly. Feelings aren't moral failings. What you do with them matters. He swallowed. What if I'm not enough? She met his gaze. Then you ask for help. That's also parenting. Kevin let out a shaky breath. I didn't plan for this version of my life. No one ever plans for the versions that matter most, Mandy said. They just adapt. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, what about you? Mandy's eyebrows lifted slightly. What about me? This affects you, he said. Everything we planned. The timing. The space. The future. He hesitated, then said the thing he'd been circling. You didn't sign up to raise someone else's child. Mandy considered that. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the city for a moment before turning back. I signed up for a life with you, she said. That includes change. It includes curveballs. It doesn't include pretending those things aren't hard. Kevin watched her carefully. Are you angry? No, she said honestly. I'm overwhelmed, concerned, and very aware that this is real. And us? She crossed back to him and sat down again, closer this time. Kevin, listen to me. I love you. That doesn't evaporate because your past showed up with legal paperwork. His throat tightened. But you're allowed to leave. I am, she agreed. And I'm not. He nodded, emotion flickering across his face. Thank you. She smiled softly. Don't thank me yet. We haven't even met her. That's another thing, he said. Michelle. I don't even know what to say to her. Start with hello, Mandy said. Then tell her the truth. Kids are better at sensing lies than adults give them credit for. He snorted. Great. Honesty. My strongest skill set. She nudged his shoulder. You literally built your life on integrity. Mostly in code. They both laughed, the sound easing the tightness in the room. Kevin leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I keep thinking about Erica, about how scared she must have been, and how she trusted me anyway. That says something, Mandy said. It says she knew I'd show up, he said quietly. Eventually. Mandy rested her head against his shoulder. You are showing up. He closed his eyes, grounding himself in her presence. I don't want to lose you. You won't, she said. Then, after a beat, but things will change. I know. Change doesn't mean loss, she added. Sometimes it just means growth with sharper edges. Kevin smiled faintly. You should put that on a motivational poster. Don't tempt me. They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that allowed breathing to even out and thoughts to settle into something manageable. After a while, Mandy stood and began unpacking her overnight bag. "We should try to sleep," she said. "Tomorrow will be a lot." Kevin lay back on the bed, staring up at the ceiling again. "Do you think she'll like me?" Mandy paused, then said, "I think she'll test you." "That sounds ominous." "She's 12, Mandy said. "It's practically a job requirement." He chuckled. "Fair." Mandy climbed into bed beside him, turning off the lamp. The room darkened, city light filtering through the curtains in soft stripes. Kevin turned onto his side, facing her. "Thank you for staying." She reached out and brushed her thumb along his cheek. "I'm not going anywhere." He let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. As sleep finally began to edge closer, Kevin thought about the life he'd planned, the orderly progression, the predictable milestones. And then he thought about a 12-year-old girl who loved the ocean and hated tomatoes, who had lost her mother and didn't yet know she was about to meet her father. The future hadn't asked permission. But lying there, with Mandy beside him and fear slowly giving way to resolve, Kevin realized that maybe permission wasn't required, only presence. Chapter 5, Proof and Probability. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, unceremonious and brief, as if it weren't carrying the weight of a human life inside it. Kevin stared at his phone while the coffee maker gurgled behind him, the subject line stark and efficient: paternity test results. For a moment, he considered not opening it, not because he doubted the outcome, but because once he did, there would be no more theoretical versions of his life left to hide behind. Mandy emerged from the bedroom, already dressed for work, her hair still damp. She took one look at his face and stopped. "That's it," she said. He nodded, throat tight. "Yeah." She crossed the kitchen and stood beside him. "Do you want to read it together?" Kevin hesitated, then handed her the phone. "You read it." She did, eyes scanning quickly, her expression softening as she reached the end. "It's confirmed," she said gently. "She's your daughter." The word daughter landed differently now, solid instead of abstract. Kevin closed his eyes and exhaled slowly, bracing for a rush of panic that didn't come. What he felt instead was a strange, grounding heaviness, like gravity had finally decided where it belonged. "Okay," he said. Mandy smiled, small but proud. "Okay." They sat at the table in silence, the morning light slanting across the surface, dust motes drifting like they hadn't just altered the trajectory of 2, and now 3 lives. Later that day, Kevin found himself on a video call with his parents, the familiar grid of faces both comforting and surreal. He'd rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, none of the scripts surviving first contact. "I have something to tell you," he began. His mother leaned forward immediately. "Are you all right?" "Yes. No. He sighed. "I found out I have a daughter." There was a beat of silence, then his father blinked. "You have what?" 12, Kevin added, as if that clarified anything. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God." Mandy sat just out of frame, her hand resting on Kevin's knee, a quiet reminder that he wasn't doing this alone. "How?" his father asked, still processing. Kevin explained. "Erica, the letter, the accident, Michelle." When he finished, his mother's eyes were wet. "That poor child." "Yes," Kevin said. "And me too, I guess." His father nodded slowly. "When do we meet her?" Kevin blinked. "You're not upset?" "Upset," his mother echoed. Kevin were shocked, concerned, and very aware that this is a lot. She smiled through her tears. "But she's family." Something in Kevin's chest loosened. Mandy's parents reacted similarly, though with more questions and a brief detour into logistics. Schools, counseling, bedrooms. Mandy fielded those with the calm efficiency of someone who could already see the road ahead, even if the details were fuzzy. The lawyer followed up quickly. Temporary guardianship paperwork. A schedule. A meeting with the family friend Michelle had been staying with. Kevin signed documents he barely read, trusting the process because there was no alternative. Every signature felt like a promise he wasn't sure he knew how to keep. The meeting was set for Saturday. The drive there was quiet, the kind of silence that hummed rather than pressed. Mandy watched the road. Kevin stared out the window, rehearsing introductions that all sounded wrong. "What if she hates me?" he asked suddenly. Mandy glanced at him. "She might. That's not helpful." "It's honest," she said. "She's grieving, confused, and 12. None of that is your fault." "What if she thinks I abandoned her?" Mandy's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Then you tell her the truth. Over and over if you have to." Kevin nodded, though his stomach churned. The house was modest, neat, with wind chimes on the porch that tinkled softly in the breeze. The woman who opened the door introduced herself as Claire, her expression kind but tired. "She's in her room," Claire said. "I told her you were coming." Kevin swallowed. "Is she okay?" "As okay as can be expected," Claire said. "She's strong. Like her mother." The words hit him harder than he expected. Michelle appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, posture guarded. She was taller than Kevin had imagined, all sharp angles and wary eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, strands escaping like they didn't want to be controlled. She looked at Kevin, then Mandy, then back at Kevin. "So," she said, "you're him." Kevin nodded. "I am. You look younger than I thought," she said flatly. Mandy hid a smile. Kevin cleared his throat. "I moisturize." Michelle blinked, then snorted despite herself. She caught it quickly, lips pressing into a line. They sat in the living room, conversation halting and strange, like learning a new language by ear. Kevin didn't push. He answered questions when she asked them. Where he lived, what he did, whether he liked dogs. "Do you like tomatoes?" she asked suddenly. "No," Kevin said without thinking. "They're texturally confusing." Her eyebrows lifted. "Okay, that's acceptable." It wasn't a breakthrough, but it felt like a crack in the wall. When it was time to leave, Michelle stood awkwardly by the door. "I'll be back," Kevin said. "Soon, if that's okay." She shrugged. "I guess." On the drive home, Kevin stared straight ahead. "She didn't throw anything at me." "That's a win," Mandy said. He laughed, the sound shaky but real. "She's amazing." Mandy nodded. "She is." That night, back in their condo, Kevin stood in the spare room, the one that had been a home office, then a storage space, then an afterthought. He imagined it differently now. A bed, posters, evidence of a life unfolding. "I'm in over my head," he said. Mandy leaned against the doorframe. "You're exactly where you need to be." He looked at her, gratitude sharp and overwhelming. "Thank you for choosing this." She smiled softly. "I didn't choose the situation. I chose us." Kevin nodded, resolve settling into place. Proof had been established. Probability had shifted. And somehow, impossibly, his life was already making room. Chapter 6. Meeting Michelle. Kevin discovered very quickly that nothing made him more nervous than waiting in his own home. He had debugged production issues with executives watching over his shoulder. He had given presentations to rooms full of people who controlled his future. None of that compared to standing in his living room, hands shoved into his pockets, staring at the front door like it might explode. "She's going to think this place is boring," he said for the third time in 10 minutes. Mandy, who was arranging snacks on the coffee table with deliberate calm, didn't look up. "It's a condo, not a theme park." "She's 12, Kevin said. "Boring is a capital offense." Mandy set down the bowl of pretzels and finally turned to him. "Kevin, breathe." He inhaled, exhaled, immediately inhaled again. "I am breathing." "You're aggressively breathing." Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. Kevin froze. Mandy smiled gently. "That'll be her." He stared at the door for a beat too long before forcing his feet to move. He opened it to find Michelle standing there with a backpack slung over one shoulder and Claire beside her. Michelle's expression was unreadable. Her posture defensive but curious, like she was daring the world to disappoint her. "Hey," Kevin said, then immediately cringed. "Hi. Hello." Michelle raised an eyebrow. "You practicing?" "Clearly not enough," he admitted. Mandy stepped forward. "Hi, Michelle. I'm Mandy." Michelle glanced at her, assessing. "You live here too?" "Yes," Mandy said easily. "I make a lot of the noise." Michelle snorted before she could stop herself. She covered it with a cough. Claire smiled at Kevin. "She's all packed. Call if you need anything." Kevin nodded, heart pounding. "Thank you. For everything." When the door closed behind them, the condo felt suddenly smaller, charged with unfamiliar energy. Michelle stood in the entryway looking around. "So this is it." "This is it," Kevin confirmed. "We can, give you a tour?" She shrugged. "Sure." The tour took approximately 2 minutes. Living room, kitchen, bathroom, the spare room that Kevin had hurriedly cleared and furnished with a bed, desk, and neutral bedding that screamed temporary solution. Michelle stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "This was an office," she said. Kevin blinked. "How did you know?" "Bookshelf indentation," she said, pointing. "And it smells like printer ink." Mandy smiled. "You're observant." Michelle shrugged again, but there was a flicker of something like pride in her eyes. They ended up back in the living room, an awkward triangle of people who shared DNA, intentions, or both, but not yet rhythm. Kevin cleared his throat. "I thought maybe we could order dinner? Or cook? Or not cook? Cooking is optional." "What kind of food?" Michelle asked. "Anything," Kevin said quickly. "Except tomatoes." She studied him. "You really don't like tomatoes?" "They're unpredictable," he said. "They pretend to be vegetables but behave like fruit." Michelle stared at him for a long moment, then nodded solemnly. "That's valid." Mandy laughed, unable to help herself. They ordered pizza, half cheese, half pepperoni, and sat on the couch while waiting. The silence was heavy but not hostile. Michelle scrolled on her phone. Kevin watched her from the corner of his eye, cataloging similarities he didn't feel entitled to yet. The shape of her nose, the way she tucked her feet under herself, the intensity of her focus. "So," she said suddenly, not looking up. "Why now?" Kevin stiffened. "What do you mean? Why didn't you know about me before?" she asked. Her voice was casual, but the question was not. Mandy shifted slightly, giving him space without leaving. Kevin took a breath. Your mom didn't tell me, he said. I didn't know you existed until recently. Michelle's fingers paused over the screen. She never told me about you either. Not until the hospital. Something sharp twisted in his chest. I wish she had. Michelle finally looked at him. Do you? Yes, he said immediately. I would have wanted to know. I would have wanted to be there. She searched his face, skepticism warring with hope. You don't have to believe me yet, he added. I just want you to know that I'm not here because I have to be. The doorbell rang, breaking the tension like a dropped glass. Pizza, Mandy said brightly. Excellent timing. Dinner was eaten cross-legged on the floor, plates balanced on knees. Michelle ate with the focus of someone who hadn't had to share space with strangers until very recently. This place is quiet, she said between bites. Kevin nodded. We both work a lot. Lawyer and? She looked at Mandy. Programmer, Mandy said. He argues with computers. Michelle glanced at Kevin. Who wins? Depends on the day, Kevin said. The computer usually remembers longer. That earned him a genuine laugh. After dinner, Michelle wandered into the spare room again, setting her backpack down this time. Kevin lingered in the doorway. You can change anything, he said. Paint, posters, whatever you want. She shrugged. It's fine. Fine isn't the goal, he said. Comfort is. She studied him. You're trying really hard. He smiled, rueful. I know. She considered that. It's weird. Yeah, he agreed. It is. She hesitated, then asked quietly, Are you going to disappear? The question hit him square in the chest. No, he said. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. She nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears she refused to let fall. Okay. Later, Mandy helped Michelle unpack while Kevin hovered uselessly, unsure where to put himself. Eventually, he retreated to the kitchen, giving them space. When Mandy joined him a while later, she leaned against the counter. She's settling in. Good, he said. She hates tomatoes. Mandy smiled. I noticed. That night, Kevin lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of someone else breathing in the condo. Not Mandy's familiar rhythm. Lighter, restless, grief-laden. He thought about Erica, about Michelle, about the life he'd missed and the one unfolding now. In the spare room, Michelle stared at the ceiling, the quiet pressing in around her. She didn't know what this would become. But for the first time since the accident, she wasn't alone in the uncertainty. Somewhere between fear and hope, both of them hovered, tentative, imperfect, and trying. And for now, that was enough. Chapter 7 Learning Curves and Lego Landmines. By the third morning, Kevin learned two important truths. First, 12-year-olds were not morning people. Second, stepping on a Lego at 6:30 a.m. was a pain he would never fully recover from, emotionally or physically. He hissed, hopping on one foot in the hallway, clutching the wall for balance. Who puts tiny plastic weapons of mass destruction on the floor? He muttered. From the kitchen came Michelle's voice, dry and unapologetic. People who like building things. Mandy looked up from her coffee, eyebrows raised. You okay? I think I saw my soul leave my body, Kevin said, lowering his foot carefully. If it comes back, tell it I'm sorry. Michelle snorted into her cereal. That, Kevin decided, counted as progress. The mornings developed a rhythm quickly, even if Kevin felt perpetually half a step behind it. Mandy was up first, efficient and unruffled, already reviewing notes or emails while the coffee brewed. Kevin followed, hair sticking up in defiance of gravity, brain still buffering. Michelle emerged last, hoodie pulled over her head, backpack slung on automatically like muscle memory. So, Kevin said one morning, trying for casual and landing somewhere near awkward. School. Michelle paused mid-bite. What about it? Do you usually walk? Bus? Portal to another dimension. She looked at him like she was deciding whether to be amused or concerned. Bus. Great, Kevin said. We love buses. Mandy hid a smile behind her mug. The bus stop was only 2 blocks away, but Kevin walked Michelle there anyway the first few days, hovering at a respectful distance that he hoped read as supportive rather than overbearing. Michelle tolerated it with exaggerated patience. You don't have to come every time, she said on the 4th day. I know, he said. I just wanted to. She shrugged. Okay. That was the closest thing to permission he'd get, and he took it. Kevin's workdays became exercises in divided attention. He was still good at his job, still solving problems, still reliable. But now his calendar included reminders like school pickup and call guidance counselor. He found himself Googling things he'd never needed to before. How to talk to a grieving child, what do 6th graders learn? Is it normal to feel like you're failing constantly? The internet, unhelpfully, answered yes to the last one. Mandy took on her role with a quiet grace that Kevin noticed and tried not to overanalyze. She didn't push herself into Michelle's space, didn't attempt instant closeness. She showed up where needed, permission slips, grocery runs, a calm presence during awkward moments, without ever trying to replace someone who couldn't be replaced. One evening, Kevin came home late to find Mandy and Michelle at the dining table, textbooks spread out between them. "What's happening?" he asked cautiously. "Math," Michelle said flatly. Mandy sighed. "Fractions." Kevin groaned. "I'm so sorry." Michelle glanced up. "You're bad at math?" "I'm bad at this math," he corrected. "Computers handle the other kind." "Then you're useless," she said, but there was a glint in her eye. Kevin dropped his bag and leaned over the table. "What's the problem?" She showed him. He squinted. "Okay, so imagine code." Mandy blinked. "Kevin, stay with me," he said. "Fractions are like variables," Michelle interrupted. "Oh, that makes sense." Kevin paused. "Wait, it does." She nodded. "Yeah." Mandy stared at both of them. "I spent 20 minutes explaining this." Kevin smiled apologetically. "Different learning styles?" Michelle smirked. "He speaks nerd." That night, after Michelle went to bed, Mandy leaned against the kitchen counter and watched Kevin load the dishwasher. "You're doing well," she said. Kevin snorted. "I served cereal for dinner last night." "She ate it," Mandy pointed out. "She requested it. Then you honored her autonomy." He smiled. "You're very good at reframing." "I'm very good at surviving chaos," she said. The condo itself began to change, subtly at first. A pair of sneakers by the door. A jacket draped over a chair. A growing collection of drawings and half-finished projects that migrated across surfaces like evidence of a life expanding. Kevin found a sense of pride in these small invasions, even when they came with hazards, like the Lego incident, or the glitter, or the time he opened the freezer to find a science experiment labeled "Do Not Touch" in block letters. "What happens if I touch it?" he asked. Michelle looked up from the couch. "You'll ruin it." "That's vague." She shrugged. "Consequences usually are." There were hard days too. Days when Michelle came home quieter than usual, eyes too bright, responses clipped. Kevin learned to notice these shifts without interrogating them. Sometimes, he'd sit with her on the couch, both of them scrolling on their phones in companionable silence. Other times, she retreated to her room, door closed but not locked, music drifting softly through the wall. One night, he knocked gently and asked, "Do you want company or space?" A pause. Then, "Company." He sat on the floor while she lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. "I miss her," she said suddenly. Kevin didn't pretend not to know who she meant. "I know. She used to sing when she cooked," Michelle said. "She was bad at it." Kevin smiled faintly. "That tracks." "She burned everything," Michelle continued. "But she didn't care." He swallowed. "She sounds fearless." "She was," Michelle said. "Until the end." Kevin closed his eyes briefly, letting the weight of that settle. "You can miss her and still laugh," he said quietly. "Those things can exist together." Michelle nodded, a tear sliding sideways into her hair. "Mandy's okay." Kevin glanced at her. "Just okay?" Michelle shrugged. "She doesn't try too hard." "I like that." He smiled. "She likes you too." "I know," Michelle said. Then softer, "I don't feel like I have to choose." Kevin's chest tightened. "You don't." As weeks passed, routines solidified. Kevin learned which silences meant "leave me alone" and which meant "please stay." He learned that Michelle hated tomatoes but loved strawberries, that she preferred the window seat on the couch, that she did her best thinking while pacing. He also learned that parenting involved a surprising amount of apologizing. "I messed that up," he told her once after snapping over something minor. "I'm sorry." She studied him. "Adults say that?" "Good ones do," he said. She nodded. "Okay." Late one Friday night, Kevin sat on the couch beside Mandy, exhaustion heavy but content. From Michelle's room came the muffled sound of laughter. She was on a call with a friend. "She's laughing more," Mandy said softly. Kevin nodded. "Yeah. You okay?" Mandy asked. He leaned his head back, staring at the ceiling. "I didn't know life could feel this full and this terrifying at the same time." Mandy smiled. "That's love." He turned to her. "Thank you for being here." She took his hand. "We're building something," she said. "It's messy, and loud, and occasionally painful. And full of Legos," he added. "Especially Legos." Kevin laughed, a sound that felt earned. Down the hall, Michelle laughed again, the sound carrying through the condo like proof that grief didn't get the final word. Kevin closed his eyes and let it wash over him. He was still learning, still catching up, but for the first time he wasn't afraid of the curve. Chapter 8: The Shape of Grief. Grief announced itself on a Wednesday, uninvited and punctual, disguised as a permission slip. Kevin found it on the kitchen counter when he came home from work, a bright orange sheet demanding a signature and a modest fee for a class trip to the Science Museum. He picked it up absently, already reaching for a pen, and froze when he saw the handwriting on the back. "Mom said the planetarium is the best part." The words were small, neat, unmistakably Michelle's. Kevin sat down hard in the kitchen chair, the paper trembling between his fingers. It wasn't the museum or the trip that hit him, it was the casualness of the reference, the certainty. The way Michelle still spoke about Erica in the present tense, like love didn't obey grammar rules. From the living room, Mandy's voice floated in. Everything okay? Yeah, Kevin said automatically. Then he tried again. I mean, can you come here for a second? She appeared in the doorway, reading his face before she followed his gaze to the paper. Oh, she said softly. I didn't even think, Kevin said. I was just going to sign it. And then she was here, Mandy finished gently. Kevin nodded, throat tight. I don't know what to do with that. Mandy crossed the room and rested her hand on his shoulder. You don't have to do anything with it right now. Michelle's bedroom door opened down the hall. Do you need the money today or tomorrow? She asked, already halfway into the kitchen. Kevin startled, then forced a smile. Tomorrow's fine. Michelle stopped short when she noticed the paper in his hand, her eyes flicking to the back. Oh, she said, mirroring Mandy's earlier tone. Sorry. I didn't mean to. It's okay, Kevin said quickly. Really? She studied him for a moment, then nodded once and retreated back down the hall, door closing softly behind her. Kevin stared after her. I don't want to make her feel like she has to edit herself around me. She shouldn't have to, Mandy said. Erica is part of her. Pretending otherwise would be dishonest. I know, Kevin said. Sometimes it feels like there's this invisible third presence in the room. Mandy smiled sadly. That doesn't mean there's no room for you. That night, Michelle was quieter than usual. She ate dinner without complaint but little conversation, pushing food around her plate more than eating it. Kevin watched, unsure whether to intervene or let the moment pass. When she stood to clear her plate, he said, Hey, do you want to talk? She paused. About what? Anything, he said. Or nothing. She hesitated, then sat back down. I had to write an essay today. Fun, Kevin offered. About family, she said. Less fun. He nodded. What did you write? Michelle picked at a chip in the table. I wrote about my mom. That makes sense. And then I wrote about you, she added, not looking at him. Kevin's breath caught. You did. She shrugged. You're here. That counts. It felt like a gift he didn't quite know how to accept. Later, Mandy retreated to the bedroom to finish some work, leaving Kevin and Michelle alone in the living room. A nature documentary played quietly on the TV, neither of them paying much attention. She used to hate documentaries, Michelle said suddenly. Said they made her sad. Why? Kevin asked. Because everything dies eventually, Michelle said matter-of-factly. She didn't like being reminded. Kevin winced. That's understandable. She liked comedies, Michelle continued. The bad ones, the kind where you don't have to think. Kevin smiled faintly. She had good taste. Michelle glanced at him. You don't mind talking about her? I don't, he said honestly. Sometimes it hurts, but pretending she didn't exist would hurt more. She nodded, eyes fixed on the screen. I'm afraid if I stop talking about her, she'll disappear. Kevin shifted closer, careful not to crowd her. People don't disappear because you stop saying their name, he said. They disappear when no one remembers them. That's not going to happen. How do you know? She asked. Because I remember her too, he said. And I didn't even get as much time as you did. She turned to him then, eyes searching. Do you miss her? The question was simple and devastating. Kevin took a breath. I miss the person I was when I knew her, he said. And I miss the version of her that existed back then. But I don't miss being left without explanation. Michelle frowned. She was scared. I know, Kevin said. That doesn't mean it didn't hurt. Michelle considered that. I get scared too. I know, he said again. So do I. She leaned back into the couch cushions. Sometimes I feel like if I let myself be happy here, it means I'm leaving her behind. Kevin's chest tightened. Being happy doesn't erase her, he said. It honors what she wanted for you. She wanted me to be okay, Michelle said quietly. Yes, Kevin said. And being okay doesn't mean you stop missing her. It just means you keep living. She nodded slowly, absorbing that. Mandy's not trying to be my mom. Kevin smiled. No, she's not. I like that, Michelle said. It makes it easier. He glanced down the hall toward the bedroom. She likes that too. Michelle hesitated. Do you ever wish things were simpler? Kevin laughed softly. Every day. Me too, she said. A comfortable silence settled between them, heavier than before but not unbearable. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent and constant. Later that night, after Michelle had gone to bed, Kevin stood on the balcony with Mandy, the cool air cutting through the warmth of the apartment. She talked about Erica, he said. Mandy nodded. How did that feel? Hard, he admitted. Necessary. Mandy leaned against the railing. I want to say something, and I need you to hear it without panicking. Kevin turned to her. Okay. I'm not competing with a memory, she said. And I don't want you to feel like you have to protect me from your past. Relief washed through him. I don't want you to feel like you're living in someone else's shadow. I'm not, Mandy said. I'm choosing this life. With you. With Michelle. With all of it. He studied her face, the conviction there unmistakable. I love you, she smiled. I know. They stood there for a moment longer, the city lights blinking like distant stars. In her room, Michelle lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about her mom's laugh, about the way Kevin listened without trying to fix things, about Mandy's quiet steadiness. Grief hadn't left, but it had changed shape, and for the first time that felt like something she could live with. Chapter 9, already assembled. Spring arrived quietly, without ceremony, the way good things often did. Kevin noticed it first in the mornings, sunlight lingering longer in the kitchen, the air losing its sharp edge when he stepped outside. Michelle noticed it when she stopped wearing her hoodie everywhere, leaving it draped over the back of the chair instead of armored around herself. Mandy noticed it when the calendar on her phone filled less with contingency plans and more with things that looked suspiciously like a life. None of them announced it out loud. They just adjusted. The condo had changed again, this time with intention. Michelle's room no longer looked temporary. The walls were painted a muted blue she'd chosen herself after a long debate that involved 3 sample swatches and a surprising amount of passion. Posters replaced neutrality. A small bookshelf appeared, already half full. The desk held schoolwork, art supplies, and a single framed photo of Erica at the beach, wind in her hair, laughing at something outside the frame. Kevin had asked once if she wanted help choosing the frame. Michelle had looked at him and said, "I've got it." He'd nodded. "Okay." On a Saturday morning not long after, Kevin stood in the kitchen flipping pancakes with a level of confidence that would have impressed his past self. Michelle sat at the table doing homework she insisted could not wait, pencil tapping against the page in a rhythm that suggested it absolutely could. "Did you sign the permission slip?" she asked without looking up. "Yes," Kevin said. "And I paid the fee." She paused. "On time?" "Yes." She glanced up at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Ha!" Mandy sipped her coffee, watching the exchange with a smile. "Careful," she said to Michelle. "He'll start expecting praise." Kevin grinned. "Too late." Michelle rolled her eyes, but she smiled too. They went to the Science Museum that afternoon. Kevin tried not to hover, failed mildly, and then corrected himself. Michelle dragged them through exhibits with the authority of someone who had already been there and knew what mattered. When they reached the planetarium, she stopped short. "My mom loved this part," she said, not with sadness this time but certainty. Kevin nodded. "Want to sit near the middle? Best view." She looked at him, surprised. "Yeah. How did you know?" He shrugged. "I read the pamphlet." She laughed, genuine and unguarded, and took the seat beside him. Later, walking home, Mandy slipped her hand into Kevin's. "You're good at this," she said quietly. "At museums?" "At being present," she corrected. He squeezed her hand. "I'm still learning. Aren't we all?" That evening, after Michelle went to her room to call a friend, Kevin and Mandy sat on the couch, the city humming outside the windows. The silence between them was easy now, no longer weighted with unspoken fears. "I want to talk about something," Mandy said. Kevin's shoulders tensed reflexively, then relaxed when he saw her expression. "Okay." She took a breath. "I don't feel like I lost the future we planned." He blinked. "You don't?" "No," she said. It changed shape, but it didn't disappear. Relief washed through him, warm and steady. "I was afraid to ask." "I know," she said. "I was afraid to answer before I was sure." He nodded. "Are you sure now?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "This isn't the life I imagined at 30. It's better in ways I didn't know to want." Kevin swallowed, emotion pressing close to the surface. "I don't want you to ever feel like you're second." "I don't," Mandy said. "And I won't. Love isn't a finite resource." From down the hall, Michelle's voice drifted out, laughing loudly at something on the phone. Mandy smiled. "She's happier." Kevin nodded. "She is. And so are you," Mandy added. He leaned back, considering that. "I am," he said, surprised at how true it felt. A week later, Kevin stood in front of a small audience in the school auditorium, hands clasped nervously in front of him. It was parent night, something he'd once assumed belonged to other people's lives. Michelle sat in the front row with Mandy, posture relaxed, expression faintly amused. Kevin cleared his throat. "Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm Michelle's dad." The word still felt new, but it didn't feel foreign anymore. He spoke briefly about adjusting, about showing up, about learning that perfection wasn't the goal. When he finished, there was polite applause, but Kevin only looked at Michelle. She gave him a small, deliberate nod. That night, as he tucked her in, something she pretended not to need but never refused, she said, "You're doing okay." Kevin smiled. "High praise." She hesitated, then added, "I'm glad it's you." His chest tightened. "Me too." After she went to sleep, Kevin stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the quiet. Not the empty quiet he'd known before. The full kind. The kind that meant people were resting safely nearby. He returned to the living room where Mandy waited, curled up on the couch with a book. "She okay?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "She is." He sat beside her, the weight of the day settling into something like peace. I used to think life was something you assembled, Kevin said thoughtfully. Step by step, carefully, according to plan. Mandy smiled. And now I think some of the most important parts come already assembled, he said. And your job is just to love them without taking them apart. She leaned her head against his shoulder. That sounds like something you learned the hard way. He laughed softly. Most things are. Outside, the city continued on, imperfect, loud, alive. Inside, Kevin Rains sat between the woman he loved and the life he hadn't planned, finally understanding that intention wasn't about control. It was about staying. And this, messy, unexpected, already whole, was a life worth staying for. Chapter 10, Staying. The first anniversary arrived without fanfare, which felt appropriate. Kevin only realized the date mattered when he saw it circled on the kitchen calendar in Mandy's tidy handwriting. No label, no explanation, just a small circle around an ordinary Saturday. He stood there longer than necessary, coffee cooling in his mug, memories stacking gently instead of crashing. A year since a knock on the door. A year since a letter had rearranged his life without asking permission. A year since he'd learned that love could arrive late and still be right on time. Michelle padded into the kitchen in socks, hair still sleep-tangled, carrying her phone. You're staring again, she said. I'm reflecting, Kevin replied. That's staring with feelings, she said. It's unsettling. He grinned. Good morning to you too. She poured cereal, paused, then glanced at the calendar. Oh, today's the thing. The thing? Kevin asked carefully. She shrugged. The day everything changed. He nodded. Yeah. She took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. Do we do anything? Kevin hesitated. I wasn't sure. Michelle considered this. Mom liked low-key. He smiled. That she did. Mandy appeared in the doorway, already dressed, hair pulled back. Liked what? Low-key, Michelle said. Kevin's being existential. Mandy kissed Kevin's cheek in passing. On brand. They didn't plan much. That was the point. They went for a walk after breakfast, the city alive with weekend noise. Michelle lagged behind them at first, earbuds in, then drifted closer, naturally inserting herself between them without comment. Kevin noticed and said nothing, letting the moment exist unremarked. At the park, they sat on a bench watching kids play, some too young to understand loss, others already carrying it quietly. Kevin felt the familiar tug of gratitude and grief braided together, no longer fighting for dominance. She would have liked this, Michelle said suddenly. Mandy nodded. She would have. Kevin waited, then asked, Do you want to talk about her? Michelle shrugged. Not right now. Okay, he said. Later if you want. Yeah, she said. Later. They walked home in companionable silence. That afternoon, Michelle retreated to her room to work on a project involving cardboard, tape, and a level of ambition Kevin found both impressive and alarming. Mandy curled up on the couch with a book. Kevin cooked dinner, humming softly, improvising with a confidence he hadn't possessed a year ago. When they sat down to eat, Michelle looked up from her plate. I told my teacher about you, she said. Kevin blinked. Me? Yeah, she said. She asked about my parents. I said my mom died and my dad found me later. Mandy watched Kevin carefully. And? Kevin asked. And she said that sounded hard, Michelle continued. I said it was, but also that it worked out. Kevin swallowed. I'm glad. Michelle met his eyes. Me too. After dinner, Mandy disappeared into the bedroom and returned a few minutes later holding a small envelope. I didn't want to make this a big thing, she said, handing it to Kevin. But I wanted to mark it. Kevin opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Erica's letter, copied neatly, the ink softer, the edges clean. I had it preserved, Mandy said quietly. So it won't fade. Kevin stared at it, throat tight. Thank you. Michelle leaned over his shoulder, reading silently. When she finished, she nodded once. Good. Later, when the condo had settled and Michelle was in her room, Kevin and Mandy sat together on the couch, legs tangled, the quiet familiar and full. I didn't know if we'd make it, Kevin admitted. Mandy smiled. Neither did I. He turned to her. Do you regret it? She didn't hesitate. No. He nodded, emotion pressing close. I don't either. They sat there, breathing together, the city outside doing what it always did, moving forward, indifferent to plans and promises. Down the hall, Michelle taped the final piece onto her project and stepped back to admire it. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it held together. That felt important. Kevin stood later that night in the hallway, listening to the sounds of his home, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint music from Michelle's room, Mandy turning pages in bed. A year ago, he'd thought love was about preparation, about choosing the right steps and following them carefully. Now he knew better. Love was about staying. Staying when the story changed. Staying when grief took up space. Staying when the future looked nothing like the plan. Kevin turned off the light and went to bed, slipping easily into the life he hadn't assembled, but had chosen, every day since, to keep whole.